The cry for help. The battle had long ended. The once bustling city of Shalara now lay in ruins. What was once a thriving hub of alien life was now just a graveyard of broken buildings and scattered debris. Fires still smoldered in the distance, their orange glow cutting through the thick, toxic smoke that filled the air. The ground was cracked and scarred from the countless bombs that had rained down from the skies. Among the destruction, there was silence. The silence of a planet abandoned by its leaders. The Galactic Council had decreed that the war was over. And with it, they pulled their resources and left. They didn't care about the survivors, the civilians. They only cared about the victory. Tiravani, an alien girl from the planet Shalara, lay hidden in the wreckage of a collapsed building. Her once beautiful purple skin was now covered in cuts, bruises, and burns. Her breathing was shallow, and blood stained the ground beneath her. She had been left behind after the battle. She wasn't important enough to save, or so they thought. She was supposed to be dead. That's what the council believed. They gave up on the survivors, believing the planet had nothing left to offer. But Tiravani had fought to survive. She held on despite the pain, the hunger, and the loneliness. She refused to die in this place. Her body was weak, but her mind was still sharp. She was a warrior by birth, raised to fight for her people. Yet there was no one left to fight for her now. She had sent countless distress signals, but each one had gone unanswered. No ships had come. No help had arrived. The Galactic Council had left her to her fate. She tried to sit up, but the pain in her chest was too much. She collapsed back onto the cold, broken concrete, her eyes fluttering closed as darkness took over. She had been trying to send out one last plea for help, but now she didn't have the strength to do it. The darkness was all-encompassing, swallowing her whole. It was easier to give in, easier to close her eyes and surrender to the void. But then there was a sound, a soft crackle, a faint hum, a signal. Tiravani's eyes shot open. Her hand shook as she reached for the small communication device at her side. It was still alive, somehow. She fumbled with the buttons, her hands trembling. But she didn't care. She couldn't let go of this last chance. The crackling stopped. The faint hum turned into a steady, almost rhythmic tone. A voice came through, soft but clear. "This is Dr. Alex Carter. I'm coming for you." Tiravani's heart skipped a beat. Someone had heard her. Someone was coming. But the voice wasn't from the Galactic Council. No, it was human. Her mind raced. Humans had been distant, isolated from the galaxy for centuries. They were a species known for their brutality, their warlike ways, but also their unwavering survival instincts. Was it possible? Could they truly be coming to save her? She tried to speak, to ask who was coming for her, but the words wouldn't come. Her throat was dry, and her mouth was parched. She had no strength left to form coherent sentences. But she didn't need to speak. She didn't need to ask questions. The fact that someone, anyone, had responded to her call was enough. The voice on the other end crackled again. "Stay with me, Tiravani. Help is on the way. Just hold on a little longer." Tiravani's mind was a whirlwind of confusion and hope. Could it be true? Was help really coming? Was this the end of her suffering? In her weakened state, it was hard to tell what was real and what was just a hallucination brought on by exhaustion. But the words felt real. The hope she felt was real. She clung to it as though it was a lifeline, something she hadn't had in so long. For a moment, the pain in her body seemed to dull. She closed her eyes for just a moment, allowing herself to believe that she wasn't truly alone anymore. Meanwhile, Dr. Alex Carter, a seasoned human medic who had been stationed on a nearby medical ship, was receiving Tiravani's distress signal. He had been trained for this. He had seen worse. But nothing had prepared him for this. He had heard stories of the destruction on Shalara, the reports of entire cities reduced to rubble. The Galactic Council had abandoned the planet, deeming it no longer important. But Alex couldn't ignore the distress signal. He had heard enough about the galaxy's apathy toward the survivors of the war. He had seen enough to know that, if he didn't act, no one else would. The medic stood before the control panel, typing commands into the system. The Starship Eagle's Hope, a small but nimble vessel, was the closest to the disaster zone. Alex was the only one willing to go. He didn't care about the risks, the danger. He wasn't going to let this alien girl die alone in a forgotten ruin. The ship's engines hummed to life, and Alex felt a surge of determination. He was heading to a planet that the galaxy had given up on, a place full of dying people and abandoned promises. He didn't know how he was going to help, but he couldn't turn back now. "I'm coming for you," he whispered under his breath, his voice barely audible over the hum of the engines. Back on Shallara, Turvani's vision was fading. The last thing she remembered was hearing the voice of the human medic. He had promised to come. She clung to that promise, feeling the faint hope that had been absent for so long. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to believe. She allowed herself to rest, to trust in the impossible. She had fought so hard for survival, and now someone was coming for her. Maybe, just maybe, there was hope after all. The Eagle's Hope soared through the vast emptiness of space, cutting through the darkness toward the ruined planet below. Alex Carter sat in the pilot's seat, his fingers tight on the controls. His heart pounded in his chest, a mix of adrenaline and anxiety coursing through his veins. He had been in dangerous situations before: war zones, collapsing stations, medical emergencies in the middle of a battlefield. But something about this mission felt different. The distress signal had been weak, barely readable, but it was enough. Someone down there was alive. Someone the rest of the galaxy had abandoned. And he was the only one answering the call. The Galactic Council had deemed Shallara a lost cause, a wasteland unworthy of rescue. The reports said there were no survivors. Alex knew better. He had learned long ago that the galaxy's bureaucrats rarely told the truth. He adjusted the ship's course, eyes scanning the screens in front of him. The planet was coming into view now, a broken world beneath a dying sun. Scorch marks covered the surface, deep craters marking where orbital bombardments had shattered entire cities. Thick clouds of ash swirled in the atmosphere, painting the sky in shades of gray and orange. It looked like hell. As he guided the ship lower, alarms beeped softly, warning him of unstable air currents and radiation spikes. He ignored them. He wasn't turning back. The signal was coming from a ruined sector on the edge of the main city. His scanners picked up collapsed buildings, wreckage, and dangerously unstable structures. No signs of life. The distress beacon was his only lead. If he was too late, if the girl had already. No. He pushed the thought away. He wasn't too late. He couldn't be. With a deep breath, he activated the ship's landing sequence. The Eagle's Hope trembled as it pushed through the turbulent atmosphere, breaking through thick layers of smoke. The visibility was terrible, but he forced the ship lower, scanning for a clear spot to land. Finally, he found it. A broken plaza near what looked like the remains of a communication tower. The ship touched down with a shudder, dust, and ash swirling around it. Alex wasted no time. He grabbed his medical pack, secured his respirator, and lowered the ramp. A gust of hot, toxic air hit him as he stepped out, the smell of burnt metal and death heavy in the air. He moved quickly, his boots crunching against the debris-covered ground. The air was thick, making it hard to see more than a few meters ahead. His wrist device beeped, tracking the signal. It was close. He stepped over a collapsed beam, moving through the wreckage carefully. Every now and then, he saw remnants of what had once been a city, a broken sign, a shattered hovercraft, a child's toy, half buried in the dust. Then he saw her. At first, he thought it was just another pile of rubble. But then he saw the faint rise and fall of a chest, the slightest movement of a hand. She was barely alive. Turvani lay there, her body covered in dust and blood. Her once deep violet skin had turned pale, and her breathing was shallow. Deep gashes covered her arms, and a nasty wound on her sides still oozed dark blood. Alex dropped to his knees beside her, pressing 2 fingers to her throat. A pulse. Weak, but there. He exhaled in relief. She was alive. He quickly pulled out his scanner, running it over her body. Internal bleeding. Severe dehydration. Signs of infection. She wouldn't last much longer without treatment. Gently, he tapped the side of her face. "Hey, can you hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered, but she didn't respond. Her breathing hitched slightly, like she was trying to wake up. He didn't waste time. Carefully, he slid his arms under her, lifting her fragile body. She barely weighed anything. She must have gone days without food or water. As he turned back toward the ship, he heard something in the distance, a faint, mechanical whirring, a sound that didn't belong to the wind or the wreckage. He froze. Then, a voice crackled through his comm. "Unauthorized presence detected. Leave immediately." Alex's blood ran cold. He wasn't alone. And whatever was watching him wasn't friendly. The warning echoed in Alex's comm, crackling with static as if it had been transmitted through damaged systems. His grip tightened around Tervani's fragile body as his instincts screamed at him. He was being watched. The mechanical whirring grew louder. Shadows flickered through the dense smoke. Something was moving in the wreckage. Alex turned toward his ship, forcing himself to stay calm. He had been in worse situations before. Maybe. But right now, he had an unconscious, injured alien girl in his arms, and he wasn't in a position to fight. Taking slow, measured steps, he moved toward the Eagle's Hope. His boots crunched against debris, every sound echoing through the dead city. The mechanical noise followed, keeping pace with him. Then, a shape emerged from the smoke. A drone. It hovered a few meters away, its sleek black body covered in scratches and scorch marks. Its red optics locked onto Alex, scanning him with a cold, calculating gaze. Weapons lined its sides, old but functional. It wasn't just a machine. It was a remnant of whatever force had destroyed this world. "State your purpose," the drone demanded in a hollow, synthetic voice. Alex's mind raced. If this thing had been left behind after the destruction of the planet, then it was likely still following old orders, orders that probably involved eliminating anything that didn't belong. Carefully, he adjusted his grip on Tervani and raised one hand. "I'm a medic. She needs help." The drone hovered closer. The red light in its optics pulsed. "All organic life has been classified as non-essential. You are trespassing." Alex cursed under his breath. Of course. The war that had wiped out this world had left behind more than ruins. It had left behind automated enforcers still carrying out their final mission. A new sound cut through the air. More whirring. More movement. Alex turned his head slightly. In the distance, 3 more drones were emerging from the ruins, their optics glowing like red stars in the darkness. He didn't have time for this. With a deep breath, he bolted. The drones reacted instantly. The closest one emitted a sharp, high-pitched beep, and then gunfire. Alex ducked low, sprinting toward the ship as energy blasts tore through the air around him. Debris exploded in sparks and smoke as the drones fired relentlessly. He gritted his teeth, shielding Tervani's body as best as he could. The Eagle's Hope was only 20 meters away. 15. 10. A blast struck the ground beside him, sending him stumbling forward. His knees hit the metal ramp of the ship, but he didn't stop. He pushed himself up, charging inside. "Seal the door," he shouted. The AI on board responded instantly. The ship's ramp retracted, the heavy doors slamming shut just as another energy blast struck the hull. The ship shuddered, alarms blaring in protest. Alex collapsed against the wall, breathing hard. Tervani was still in his arms, her breathing weak but steady. "Hang in there," he muttered, carrying her toward the medbay. Outside, the drones circled the ship, their mechanical voices echoing through the dead city. Target acquired. Awaiting new directives. Alex didn't like the sound of that. Whatever these machines were planning, they weren't done yet. Alex secured Tervani onto the medbay's examination table, his hands moving swiftly as he activated the ship's medical scanners. The dim blue light flickered over her frail body, displaying a readout on the nearby screen. Her vitals were weak, her oxygen levels dangerously low, and internal injuries were worse than he'd thought. He clenched his jaw. She didn't have much time. Outside, the ship's sensors detected movement. The drones hadn't left. They were circling, waiting, calculating their next move. The low hum of their engines vibrated through the hull, a constant reminder that he was trapped. Alex had been in tough spots before: wars, hostage extractions, deep space rescue missions. But this was different. He was alone. There was no backup coming. No command center feeding him intel. Just him, an injured alien girl, and a pack of ancient war machines that saw them as nothing more than intruders. He exhaled slowly and focused on what he could control, saving her life. His hands moved with practiced precision, stabilizing her vitals, sealing the worst of her wounds, and administering oxygen through a mask fitted for her species. She shivered slightly but didn't wake. Her body was fighting, but it needed time. Time he might not have. A sudden clang echoed through the ship, followed by another, then another. Alex's stomach twisted. They weren't waiting anymore. The drones were trying to get in. He rushed to the cockpit, his boots thudding against the metal floor. The external cameras showed the drones had positioned themselves around the ship. They weren't attacking blindly. They were looking for a weak point, a way inside. One of them had already started cutting through the lower hull with a precision laser. Sparks flew as the metal sizzled and melted away. Alex cursed. If they breached the ship, he was done. He needed to act now. His fingers flew over the control panel, powering up the ship's defensive systems. The weapons were offline. He'd landed without expecting a fight. Big mistake. But the engine thrusters were still operational. A risky idea formed in his mind. He grabbed the flight controls and activated the emergency thrusters. The ship lurched violently as a blast of heat erupted from the rear engines. The drones didn't have time to react. The one cutting into the hull was instantly engulfed in flames, its body twisting and melting before exploding into a fiery mess. The remaining drones scattered, recalculating. Alex didn't wait for them to recover. He activated the ship's hover systems, lifting it just a few meters off the ground. Dust and debris swirled beneath him as he adjusted the thrusters, angling the ship's nose toward the ruined city. He had no intention of fighting them head-on. He was going to lose them. With a deep breath, he punched the throttle. The ship shot forward, skimming just above the surface of the dead world. Buildings flashed past as he weaved through the ruins, pushing the engines to their limit. Behind him, the drones pursued. Their sleek frames twisted through the air, adjusting their speeds to match his. The chase was on, and Alex had no intention of losing. Not today. Not with Tervani's life on the line. The ship rocketed through the ruins, barely skimming over the broken remains of an ancient civilization. Alex's knuckles were white against the controls as he pushed the engines harder, forcing the ship into sharp turns through crumbling buildings and towering stone structures. The drones were relentless, weaving through the debris with eerie precision. One drone broke formation, speeding ahead and positioning itself directly in Alex's path. Its energy cannon glowed, charging for a shot. Alex yanked the controls, tilting the ship hard to the side. The blast streaked past, barely missing the hull. The explosion behind him sent up a plume of dust and shattered stone. His heart pounded. These drones weren't just automated sentries. They were hunting him with intelligence. And they were learning. Another drone surged forward, firing a rapid burst of plasma bolts. One struck the ship's left wing, sending alarms blaring across the cockpit. Alex cursed. He couldn't keep this up. His eyes darted across the display screens, searching for an escape route. The city's ruins stretched in every direction, but something caught his eye: a narrow canyon formed by two collapsed skyscrapers ahead. It was barely wide enough for his ship. A grin formed on his lips. "Let's see if you can follow me in here." He dove into the canyon at full speed. The drones hesitated for a fraction of a second before following. The walls rushed past, dangerously close. One wrong move, one miscalculation, and he'd shatter against the jagged remains of this forgotten world. But Alex wasn't flying blind. He skimmed the ship just above the rocky surface, using every bit of his experience to keep the vessel stable. The drones, however, struggled. Their advanced programming allowed them to navigate most environments. But this was different. The canyon twisted, narrowed, and sloped sharply downward. The first drone misjudged a turn. Its metallic body clipped a jagged outcropping, just enough to send it spiraling out of control. It smashed into the canyon wall with a deafening crash, erupting into flames. One down. The remaining drones adjusted, adapting to the terrain. But Alex wasn't done. Up ahead, the canyon ended in a deadly drop-off, a sheer cliff that plunged straight into darkness. If the drones kept following, they'd have to either pull up instantly or plummet into the abyss. Alex, however, had another plan. At the last possible moment, he cut the engines. For a terrifying second, the ship fell, free falling into the darkness below. The drones reacted just as he expected. They tried to follow, but they weren't built for sudden drops. One overshot the edge, unable to course correct in time. It slammed into the cliff face, shattering on impact. The second drone tried to pull up, but Alex was already a step ahead. He reignited the engines, pushing the ship into a tight barrel roll just beneath the falling wreckage. The debris struck the final drone, sending it tumbling into the abyss. Silence. Only the hum of his ship's engines remained. Alex let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He'd won, but he wasn't safe yet. He turned the ship back toward the ruined city, heading straight for the medical bay where Tervani lay unconscious. The battle was over. But the real fight, saving her life, was just beginning. The ship touched down near the ruined medical bay, its landing struts sinking slightly into the dust-covered ground. Alex barely waited for the engines to cool before he unstrapped himself and bolted out of the cockpit. The adrenaline from the chase still surged through his veins, but he didn't have time to think about that now. Tervani's life was slipping away, and he was her only chance. He rushed inside, the dim emergency lights flickering weakly in the ruined facility. The building groaned under its own weight, ancient metal beams barely holding together after centuries of decay. He navigated past overturned examination tables, shattered glass, and long-dead medical equipment, heading straight for where he had left her. Tervani lay on the cot, her breathing shallow, her body unnaturally still. The once glowing veins along her arms had faded, her skin losing its luster. Alex had seen enough critical patients to know she didn't have much time left. His mind raced. He had to work fast. He dumped his medkit onto a nearby counter, spreading out his supplies. Alien physiology was always tricky, but he had some idea of what he was dealing with. Tervani's species relied on a unique energy-based circulatory system. Without the right energy balance, their bodies shut down permanently. Alex pulled out a bioscanner and ran it over her chest. The readings were grim. Her internal energy levels were almost depleted. Come on," he muttered, reaching for a stimulant injector. He adjusted the dosage, aligning it with what he knew about her biology. If he got it wrong, it could make things worse. With a deep breath, he pressed the injector against her arm and squeezed the trigger. The device hissed, releasing the specialized serum into her bloodstream. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, her body convulsed. Alex's heart leaped into his throat. Her limbs jerked, her breathing hitched, and a faint glow returned to the veins on her hands. But it wasn't enough. She needed more. He frantically searched through the wreckage of the medical bay, overturning storage containers, prying open ancient cabinets. His fingers wrapped around something cylindrical, a vial marked with a faded alien script. He wiped off the dust and squinted at the label. It wasn't just a stimulant. It was pure energy infusion. If he was right, this was exactly what she needed. If he was wrong, he hesitated for only a second. He had no choice. Alex loaded the vial into the injector and pressed it against her neck. The moment he activated it, Tervani's body arched off the cot. Her eyes snapped open, burning gold. The glow in her veins flared to life, spreading up her arms, across her face, through every part of her body. The air hummed around her, an invisible force radiating outward. Alex stumbled back as the entire room shook. The ruined medical bay lights flickered, then blazed to life, as if responding to her presence. Equipment that hadn't worked in centuries powered on. Tervani gasped, her breath ragged, her hands gripping the cot. Her eyes locked onto Alex, filled with something between confusion and awe. "You brought me back." Alex exhaled sharply, running a hand through his sweat-dampened hair. "Yeah," he said, and not a moment too soon. Tervani's gaze flickered around the room, taking in the still active machines, the dust floating in the air, the remnants of a place that once saved lives but had been abandoned by time. Then she looked at him, really looked at him. "You stayed." Her voice was softer now, tinged with something he couldn't quite place. Alex shrugged. "You needed help." For a long moment, she didn't speak. Then she reached out, placing her hand over his. Her skin was warm, pulsing with energy. "You're different," she murmured. Alex chuckled, exhaustion catching up to him. "Yeah, I get that a lot." A small smile touched her lips, the first he'd seen from her. But the moment was short-lived. Because outside, a deep rumbling echoed through the ruins. Something, or someone, had noticed the power surge. And they were coming. The deep rumbling outside sent a chill down Alex's spine. He and Tervani locked eyes, both instantly understanding the same thing. They weren't alone anymore. Tervani sat up quickly, still weak but far stronger than before. The golden glow in her veins pulsed steadily, proof that her energy levels had stabilized. She swung her legs off the cot and stood, wobbling slightly before regaining her balance. Outside, the sound of heavy machinery echoed through the ruins. A deep, guttural voice growled through a loudspeaker, speaking in an alien tongue. Alex didn't need a translator to understand what they were saying. "Survivors detected. Kill them." Tervani's grip tightened on his arm. "They must have tracked the energy surge," she whispered. Alex nodded, his mind already racing for a plan. "How many are we talking?" Tervani closed her eyes for a moment, reaching out with her heightened senses. When she opened them, her expression was grim. "At least a dozen. Armed. And they're closing in fast." Alex cursed under his breath. A dozen armed hostiles against one human medic and a recovering alien. The odds were not in their favor. Unless... His eyes darted around the medical bay. The old machines were still humming with power. The surge that had revived Tervani had also reactivated the facility systems. An idea sparked in his mind. It was risky, but it was better than nothing. "Tervani, can you still control energy?" he asked quickly. She hesitated, glancing at her hands. I think so. My reserves are low, but I can try." "That's all we need." Alex grabbed a nearby console, fingers flying across the dusty controls. If the medical bay had reactivated, that meant its security systems might have too. And he was right. A holoscreen flickered to life, revealing a map of the ruins. At the bottom of the display, he spotted a word in the alien script that he hoped meant what he thought it did. "Defense Systems. Stay in DBY mode." He grinned. "Bingo." Tervani watched him with wide eyes. "What are you doing?" Alex didn't stop typing. "I'm about to turn this place into a death trap." Outside, the enemies were getting closer. Shadows moved between the ruined buildings, their weapons gleaming in the dim light. Alex pressed one last button, activating the automated defenses. Instantly, the room shuddered. Old security turrets sprang to life from the walls, their barrels swiveling toward the approaching hostiles. Energy barriers hummed as they flickered into place, sealing off key entry points. Outside, the lead enemy barely had time to react before a turret blasted him off his feet. Chaos erupted. The attackers scattered as gunfire and energy blasts tore through the ruins. The air filled with the sharp scent of burning metal and scorched ground. Tiravani's eyes widened in amazement. "How did you?" Alex smirked. Never underestimate human improvisation. But the fight wasn't over. A massive explosion rocked the building as one of the enemy soldiers fired a rocket launcher at the security system. The blast tore through the barriers, creating an opening. Tiravani staggered, clutching her side. "They're breaking through." Alex gritted his teeth. "Then we take them out ourselves." He grabbed a fallen enemy's rifle and tossed another to Tiravani. She hesitated, but then her golden eyes burned with determination. Together, they charged into the chaos. Blaster fire filled the air as they took cover behind rubble, returning fire when they could. Alex's training as a battlefield medic kicked in. Quick movements, precise shots, never waste ammo. Tiravani, now regaining her strength, used her energy abilities in ways Alex had never seen. She absorbed enemy fire, redirecting it back at them in blinding bursts of golden energy. One by one, their attackers fell. Finally, silence settled over the ruins. The last enemy slumped to the ground, his weapon clattering beside him. Alex let out a breath, his heart still hammering in his chest. He glanced at Tiravani. Her glowing veins had dimmed slightly, but she was smiling. "We did it," she whispered. Alex chuckled, shaking his head. "I don't know about you, but I'd rather not do that again." Tiravani stepped closer, looking at him with something he couldn't quite describe. "You saved me. You saved all of us." He shrugged. "It's what I do." She hesitated, then took his hand. "No, Alex, it's who you are." For the first time, he let those words sink in. The galaxy had ignored her, left her for dead. But one human had made a difference, and maybe that was enough.